The storm raged over the city like a beast, lightning tearing through the sky as thunder rolled across the rooftops. In the middle of the chaos, a young woman ran down a cobblestone path, soaked to the bone, clutching something against her chest, a small boy, limp and gasping. Her breath came in short bursts, tears mixing with the rain. She didn't care how dark the night was, or how dangerous the neighborhood had become. All she knew was that the boy in her arms, a stranger's son, was fading fast. Shawl around her shoulders as she hurried home from work, her shoes squelching with every step. Her mind was already heavy with worries, the rent due next week, her son's cough, the grocery list she couldn't fully afford. But even through her exhaustion, she noticed the small figure lying motionless by the curb, half hidden beneath the shadows of a tree. For a moment, her heart froze. It was a child. Her breath hitched as she rushed forward, kneeling beside him. The rain soaked through her skirt as she gently turned him over. His face was pale, lips blue, chest barely moving. "Oh dear God," she whispered. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" The boy's eyes fluttered but didn't open. She pressed trembling fingers to his neck, a faint, thready pulse. He was alive, but barely. Without a second thought, she lifted him into her arms. He was heavier than he looked, limp as a rag doll, rainwater dripping from his dark hair onto her shoulder. Alina's mind raced. The hospital was too far, and her phone was dead. The storm had knocked out the power lines, there was no one else on the streets. Then, through the sheets of rain, she saw the glimmer of golden light, a grand mansion at the end of the lane, surrounded by tall black gates. She'd seen it before, in whispers and rumors. It belonged to Victor Moretti, a man people feared to even mention. But right now, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the fragile boy in her arms gasping for air. She stumbled toward the gate, soaked and shivering, shouting over the roar of the storm. "Help, please, somebody, help me." Her voice cracked from desperation. Two men emerged from the shadows, dressed in black suits, eyes sharp and suspicious. One of them reached for his gun, but the moment they saw the child in her arms, they froze. He's not breathing properly," she cried. The taller guard's face drained of color. That's the boss's son." He yanked open the gate, shouting something into his earpiece. "Get the doctor, now." Elena ran past them, her legs trembling as she climbed the stone steps. Her arms ached, her breath came in gasps, but she refused to stop. She reached the door and pounded it with her fist. "Please, open the door, he needs help." The heavy doors swung open, and there he was, Victor Moretti himself, towering in the doorway, eyes cold and unreadable. But when his gaze landed on the boy, his entire expression broke. "Elio," he shouted, rushing forward. His voice, once feared across the city, trembled. Elena's lips quivered. He collapsed in the rain. I didn't know where else to take him. For a heartbeat, the world stood still, the storm fading into silence as a ruthless man's heart cracked open at the sight of his helpless son. Victor's eyes widened, his breath catching in his throat as he took his son from Elena's trembling arms. The boy's skin was cold, his lashes clinging together with raindrops, his small chest rising and falling in shallow, labored breaths. For a moment, the powerful Mafia Boss, the man who commanded armies, who struck fear into entire cities, looked utterly human, vulnerable, and terrified. "Elio, my boy," he whispered, voice trembling. "Don't do this to me." He turned sharply to the guards who had rushed behind him. "Call drive, Marino, now." His tone was steel again, commanding, desperate. Two men sprinted down the marble hallway, their footsteps echoing through the grand house. Victor knelt on the ornate rug, clutching his son close, his perfectly tailored suit soaking through from the boy's drenched clothes. "You'll be fine, son, Papa's here," he murmured, brushing wet hair from Elio's forehead. Elena stood frozen at the doorway, unsure what to do. The warmth of the house contrasted sharply with her soaked, shivering body. She clutched her hands together, dripping rain onto the polished floor. Everything about this place screamed wealth and power: crystal chandeliers, marble floors, golden framed portraits, a world she had never belonged to. But right now, none of that mattered. She had done what she could. Still, something in her heart wouldn't let her leave just yet. When Victor finally looked up at her, his face was pale but his eyes burned with intensity. You found him." She nodded, voice shaky. "He was lying in the street, near the old oak tree. He wasn't moving. I didn't know where else to go." For a long moment, Victor just stared at her, rain still dripping from his sleeves. Gratitude and shock warred in his expression, and beneath that, something softer, something deeply human. "You did the right thing," he said finally, voice quieter, gentler than she expected. "If you hadn't, I don't want to think what could have happened." Before she could respond, the house doctor arrived, an older man in a trench coat carrying a black medical bag. He knelt beside the boy, checking his pulse and breathing, then shot Victor a look. "He's cold and in respiratory distress. Likely pneumonia. We need to warm him and get oxygen immediately." Victor nodded sharply. "Do it, whatever he needs." As the doctor worked, Victor turned back to Elena. For the first time, he seemed to see her, not just as a stranger, but as someone who had risked everything in the middle of a storm to save his child. "You stayed with him?" he asked softly. Elena lowered her eyes. "I couldn't just walk away." For a moment, Victor said nothing. Then, in a tone laced with emotion he rarely allowed himself to show, he said, "You've done more for me tonight than most people I've trusted my entire life." The words hung in the air like a vow, the storm still raging beyond the mansion's walls.